It was so hard for me to say, I have a drug problem. I'm a drug addict. I couldn't tell my family that. Grew up in a pretty normal household. 3 brothers, mom and dad together, college-educated parents. There was nothing traumatic in the childhood. Parents never abused us. There was no divorce. There was no neglect. It was love everywhere. Played in the band. I did all kinds of extracurriculars. Always got pretty good grades, not great, but A's and B's all throughout school. There was nothing in my upbringing that would point to this guy is going to be a drug addict. None of that was around. We were always taught that drugs were bad. We were, told we shouldn't be smoking, that we had to stay in school. I remember being in DARE class in 5th grade, and the cop was telling us all about drugs. And I remember sitting in the back and kind of taking notes. He was explaining how people make meth. And I'm back there taking notes, and I had that thought, even as a kid, never tried a drug, never even seen a drug. And I had that thought of, I'll probably smoke pot. Fast forward to about 14 years old. One day I decided I wanted to smoke pot. Wasn't offered to me. Nobody was putting it in my face. You want to smoke a joint? I sought it out, found somebody who could sell it to me, took some change from my dad's change jar behind his TV, and bought a bag of pot. Me and this friend, we were hanging out, and took it and rolled it up with notebook paper and tried to smoke it, and we didn't even get high. I still had some of the weed left, so like any person who wants to get high did and has no friends who do drugs, got on the internet to try to figure out how to make a pipe. I did like it. I liked it a lot. I didn't know why, just knew it made me feel good. And then I smoked again the next day, and then the next day after that, and the day after that, and the day after that. Ran out of weed, went out, got more. The first time I got drunk, I got really drunk. I don't know how I got back home. I woke up in a pile of vomit. I didn't remember most of the night, but I remembered it was fun. And so that's where alcohol became a regular occurrence. Right around the same age, discovered prescription pills. Soon after that, discovered cocaine. It progressed all through. I didn't draw a sober breath anywhere in school. I went through that entire 4 years, drinking, using, smoking every single day, while maintaining a really good image. Got great grades. I graduated high school with college credits. Even got somewhat of a scholarship to go to college. When I moved into the dorms at Yavapai College was when things really took a turn. The only people that knew were people that I would use and drink with. Nobody else really knew. When I got to college, I didn't hide it. I was on drugs, and people knew. And at the time, it didn't even occur to me that other people weren't living this way. They weren't doing as many drugs as I was. They might take a hit of pot, but I'm gonna smoke the whole bag. And I didn't know that they weren't doing that for a long time after. It just felt normal. I stopped caring what people thought. I stopped caring what I looked like. I stopped caring what it was doing to me. My circle of friends was getting more and more risky. Got a little job working as a dog trainer at a pet resort thing and working in dog daycare. And that job suited me in an addiction. I didn't have to deal with people very much. I could hang out in this daycare yard with a bunch of dogs and didn't really have to talk to anybody. I remember this guy started living with me. I was getting into raves at the time, and this guy had moved in on my couch. This was back when you could get the Oxycontin 80s. Put one on a piece of foil, smoked it. I threw up everywhere, couldn't handle it. Acquired a taste for the Oxycontins, got insanely hooked on those. I had a shoulder injury right about that same time. And I was on painkillers from the doctor. Pills are expensive. Doctor didn't want to prescribe them. I smoked heroin for the first maybe 3-4 months that I did it, and then discovered the needle. And that's where it was done after that. And it just got worse and worse from there. I remember showing up to work sober one day. I couldn't get drugs. They became so used to seeing me high that they thought they knew the difference. But the times they thought I was high, I was actually sober. And the times I was actually sober, they thought I was high. I was only living 10 minutes from my family at the time. They would come and we'd see each other, but even living 10 minutes away, I'd only see them on Christmas. One night I finally had a realization. I had gone to this rave. A buddy of mine had done all kinds of meth and heroin on the way there. We got there, I ran into another guy that I hadn't seen in a long time, and he sold me some acid. And I had paid for 2 hits, and he had this Visine bottle, and he just squirted probably close to half the bottle under my tongue. I was happy he gave me a lot more than I paid for. But the sun came up, everybody went home, and I'm still out in the desert hallucinating. Figured out how to get home, and I walked back into the house. At this time I was renting a room from a guy. I walked back into this house, still hallucinating from the night before. I'll never forget how dirty everything looked. And I think this is where I finally had a realization that this wasn't okay. And I was hot and I was sweaty and I couldn't find a clean place to lay down. I ended up just going and sitting in the shower until we were out of hot water, and it ended up with me in the fetal position, just crying. What happened to me? What happened to my life? I have no friends, I have no anything. It was so hard for me to say, I have a drug problem, I'm a drug addict. I remember when I first even asked for rehab, there was questions as to whether or not I even needed treatment. I had to come out and say, no, I can't keep a needle out of my arm for 6 hours. Finally made it into a treatment program. Left after 2 days because there was some kind of insurance issue and I didn't want my parents to mortgage their house to keep me in there. Went into that treatment program, was there just over 2 months, drank in the treatment program. They didn't catch me, but I told them what happened. You know, I was defeated. I couldn't stay sober in an inpatient program. I couldn't stay clean. After about seven days after I drank in that treatment program, I left. And I didn't just leave. I was able to convince my family that I was better. I had been in a program for 67 days and I was only 6 days sober. And they believed it. They didn't know what they were looking at. They didn't have the slightest clue. And they believed me more than the doctor. They believed me more than the therapist. So I moved in with Mom and Dad. 6 days sober after being in treatment for over 2 months. And we had this plan that I just needed a job and I just needed to date healthier girls and I just needed better friends. So I got a job at a brewery, making beer, started dating a somewhat healthier girl, lived with Mom and Dad and had zero responsibility. You know, eventually it progressed back to heroin and then a few overdoses later, finally made it back into treatment. That time I was listening, and I think the important thing was my family started to listen too. It was taking me a little while to come around that I needed 90 days in treatment. My family started to listen to that stuff too, and they started to understand. You know, and they would talk to the therapist and actually do what the therapist said. So I ended up doing 90 days in treatment, and then went to a sober living home after. Did sober living for like a couple of months, and then they offered me a job, said live here for free, manage the house. Was in that sober living for 18 months. Started as a client, finished as managing the place. Met my wife out there, we got married. Was offered another job that paid really well to go work for an intervention company in Chicago. Moved from California to Chicago. Got to work for an intervention company, made enough to pay off all of my debt from my addiction. People started to trust me, the family came back. I was able to support the dogs. We don't have any kids, but we could pay the dog vet bills. It's okay to be an addict. It's okay to be on drugs, but it's time to change the behavior. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you need. You gotta ask for help.
Detox to Rehab wants to help as many people as possible and do it the right way. Please subscribe, comment, and like our channel. Thank you for watching.